DJJ's goal is to make connections, have public safety as our forefront, but make connections, looking at public safety. We want it to be fair, and we want to have our purpose. So with looking at those as our goal to start out with, when we're meeting with kids and families, when they come into our doors, we're making an assessment from the very beginning to make a determination as what would be the right fit for this child, what would be the appropriate intervention for this child. So with starting out at the intake level, we're looking, one, is it legitimate that they have been in charge with something? And then two, what is the degree of what's happened and how can we intervene? So the intervention may be that they do need to go to court, but the intervention may be that we need to reach out to the community to bring in resources to address what the problem is. I'll use the example of, let's say there's a community dispute between neighbors and someone gets assaulted in the process, and it's a relatively minor thing. We may be able to reach out with that family and say, what can we put in place to address what the issue was? And no one may need to go to court because of that. So if we can put services in place, that's the first point of intervention. We're supporting the family, we're supporting the kid. One of the things that DJJ over time has learned with just looking at research of what's going on is that if we can keep kids out of our system, they tend to do better. And if you think in your own history, did you do something as a child that you weren't supposed to do? Did you do something as a teenager that you may not have done? And it's only because you never got caught. Maybe that was why you never came in, or someone didn't take it to the court to address it. It's not that you didn't do something wrong, but they didn't take it to that level. So we want to create that opportunity for kids in general. We don't want to think that everybody has to go through this system at the harshest extreme of being charged, being incarcerated. So that's what our purpose is, to get started just from that perspective. With bringing them in, what my task for interviewing and meeting with that family is to make the assessment from the very beginning of what the needs are. So we're going to have staff that's going to be talking to the family, making that decision. Let's say we do have to go a little bit further and they are going to go in front of the court. Then our next step is we really do need to interview and create a good assessment on that family. So when we create a social history, we're digging into what's going on, what were the circumstances, and then from there we're looking at what could possibly be barriers for this child and this family for what their risk factors are, and then how can we intervene. Because I know you've talked to some of our other partners that we work with, in doing that, we're trying to match the right kid, right fit, right intervention from that perspective. Our goal is we want the kids to leave with better skills than what they came in with, or to even create skills that they may not have even had from that perspective. We want families to be healthier so that they are the support system for their child. And I made reference to what our goal was connection. So we have to be connected as a community. Kids who come into our system, or kids who come into the criminal justice system in general, they come back to the community. So if we can put things in place that can help move them along so they make better decisions, have an opportunity to practice and try to do something in a different perspective, because sometimes it really is about exposure of how I can do something different. So just based on that, so I'm going to back up. When I'm talking about that social history that we may be doing to do those assessments and to make that piece from the standpoint of where do we go from here. Then once we're putting things in place, let's say they do need to go on supervision at that point because we think they need that extra level of support for that child and that family. Then at that point we're going to be looking at utilizing that information and now taking it to the point of putting in a treatment plan for them. We reach out, as I said, we reach out to our partners who help support us in doing that. And with that is to put that support to take it to the next level of how can we work more intensively with this child to address what this issue is for this child and this family, and we go with that. The other benefit that we have with it is the level of the probation officers that we have on staff. Our expectation is that they'll create good relationships with kids and families as well. So we're not just relying on our vendors to provide services to the child, but our probation officers are creating those positive relationships with the child and the family, and they in turn are also helping to develop skills. Sometimes we have kids and when you're talking to them, they may say, well, I got upset with whoever this community member is that they came in contact with, and they feel that they were disrespected, and that's why, as a kid would say, I flipped off on them. And so sometimes when you're having those type of conversations with a child, you're saying like, well, you were upset with me, but you didn't flip off. And they may say, well, you're not like that. And I'm saying, but yes, I am, but you didn't flip off. What was different? So we need to help them to understand what those differences are so they can recognize it. Because I'm going to use that information. If you cannot flip off with me when I put a sanction in, and I may say I take away your curfew because of some violation that you've done. You don't flip off with me. If you can practice that with me, you can practice with someone else. But we have to create that opportunity. We can help them to understand it from that perspective. What With some of our kids, they do need more services, and I know that you've done interviews and you've gone to our other resources that we have for the CPPs. So even within that, our philosophy goes across the line for DJJ, whether you're coming in at the front end of intake or whether you're at parole. We are training our staff to understand the importance of assessment. We're training our staff of the importance of understanding that we have to have good core skills. So we have, DJJ has made an investment to make sure that our staff understand the significance of having good interviewing skills, having good skill development opportunities that they can work with kids with. We go across the spectrum, so it's not just at the CSUs, it's not just at the community placement programs, it's not just at Bon Air that this is going on. And we also share that information with the vendor partners that we work with so that they understand what are our assessment tools, the language that we use and why we use it, and why we've targeted certain things from the standpoint of saying this is what our risk factor is and this is what we want you to work on. So the investment has been there. It's a buy-in across the board. So as I say, we start at intake, but we go to parole if necessary from that standpoint. But we all have the same purpose and goal. And that is we want kids to leave our system with better skills than what they came in.
Are the kids receptive to this? I mean, is it hard to get them to open up to you?
I think with any child, it's about creating connection. So when I talk about that goal, those 4 goals are really important. And connection is about building relationships, building a rapport. So when I first meet a child, there may be some resistance there. They don't know me, they don't trust me, they may even say to me, you're just in this for the job. They don't know you. Sometimes those are defense mechanisms that people will just throw out in general. It's like, how can I push you away a little bit because I don't want you to get too close and kind of get under my skin and really see that I'm vulnerable from that standpoint. Over time, to be in this field, you have to be here because you want to be here. And because you want to be here, you're willing to make that investment to build relationships. With building relationships, nobody wants to be unhappy is what I say. From that standpoint, what can we do to change this? And with that, that's when we can start getting the buy-in, just from that perspective of how can we do this differently. I will say to a child, I want you to get off supervision successfully, and I do not want you to end up in the adult system. And I say it with sincerity.
So how long have you been a part of this? Since the beginning, 2017?
With the transformation, yes, I have.
Okay, so, but before that then, were you, I'm just seeing how things worked. I mean, why wasn't this done sooner? I mean, in your opinion, why was there this aha transformation moment of getting to this root problem? Why not 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I would say that the transformation kicked into gear with Director Block for sure. His passion for working with kids and families was definitely there. But I would also say from DJJ's perspective, some of the transformational efforts that were put in place had started years before as well. Using our assessment tools, we use a DAI, which is an assessment instrument we use for whether a kid should go into detention, and using our risk assessment, that's a tool that we've been using for quite a while as well, of just trying to identify where kids are. Other areas that have changed in DJJ over time was even how we did our social histories. So some of those things were already in place. Sometimes the culture of the community changes. The culture of our nation can change at various times. So sometimes it may be more of a pro-punitive approach, and then it will switch again and it'll be more rehabilitative approach. So I think it's a cultural change that kicks in sometimes for where it is and how it happens at that time. The other piece I will say, Director Block came in with a vision. And so I would say he fast-forwarded to kick us into gear. From my perspective, it has always been about the kids and the family. It has always been about what can we do to support this child to be more successful. It is not about me personally. It's about this kid is before me. I need to not do something to harm this kid. Or worse yet, I need not do enough for this kid that I'm capable of doing. So from that standpoint, I'm saying, like, why did it not happen earlier? I think it's a matter of time, but I'll also say I think some of it was already in place. I think as an agency and as anybody for that matter, I think we're always trying to grow and move into that direction of how can we get better at what we're doing.
Can it get better?
I think there's always room for improvement. I think there's always room for improvement from that perspective. Nothing stays the same, just like our economy doesn't stay the same, which means that what happens in our communities won't stay the same, housing opportunities won't stay the same, school opportunities won't stay the same. So anytime there's a change anywhere in that effect, it can impact what happens in our community. And if what changes in our community will impact how people act sometimes.
And, well, okay, so if we're talking about the state of our nation and things like that impacting a youth, I mean, do you feel like now more than ever these things are needed?
Oh, yes. Yes, I think
Why?
families always need that extra support from the standpoint of, if you don't know where to turn to get assistance, then it's not because you don't want assistance, it's just that you don't know where to turn. So sometimes from that standpoint, I think the greater society's commitment to help each other, and we are all in this together. So if I pull away and say, I don't need to do this and I don't need to try to work with people, they're on their own, then we're going to get what we've gotten in the past that may not have always been in our best interest, even for our whole society as a whole, from that perspective.